Along with individual experts, Surgeon Masters brings you life improvement strategies in 10 minutes. These proven principles and strategies are easy to learn and can be applied immediately, allowing you to practice your best. Here's your host, Jeff Smith.
On this episode of the Surgeon Masters mini podcast, I have with me Becky Wolfe, a leadership and health coach. Becky is also a PA by training. Thanks for following Surgeon Masters and seeing the shared vision that we have about making life improvements for all healthcare professionals. Welcome to the podcast.
It is so great to be here, Jeff. Thanks for having me.
So Becky, tell our audience more about what drew you into health coaching and or leadership consulting and coaching that you do for healthcare organizations.
Yeah. So as you mentioned, I started my career as a PA and I found myself in cardiology pretty quickly into my career, into my practice. And one of the biggest disconnects that I found early on was we were treating a lot of chronic disease, but we really weren't doing a lot to help people get well or get healthy. So that frustration led me to becoming a health coach. I fell in love with coaching from there and decided to do it as a profession. So I ended up getting certified even further with leadership coaching and consulting a few years back and started my own business. So now I coach executives and teams and help everyone on the team feel like they're valued, seen, and heard. And I figured out during that time that my brain works the best, thinking big picture strategically for people and really helping people understand themselves on a deeper level, thus helping the team dynamic.
And so that's great for a mini podcast, staying kind of in the big picture, right? But it sounds like one of your big focuses is on improving team collaboration.
Yes, I love to help teams function optimally. So I think like most of us in healthcare, we're a little bit nerdy. We love data, research, studies, those types of things. So when I started thinking about executive coaching, I started researching people like William Kahn, who's a psychologist, who talked about workplace engagement in the 1990s. And then the company that I partner with, Giant, we have a focus on Project Aristotle, which is from Google. And the identifying factors in both of those pieces of research were that you needed to have high levels of trust on teams in order for them to function optimally. So there's 5 components in Project Aristotle that William Kahn actually identified in the 90s, and those are psychological safety, meaning, dependability, structure, and clarity, which are the foundational elements for high-performing teams. The average team functions at about 60% capacity. So there's so much room for growth. So the work that I do now is help people identify their strengths in teams and help everybody bring their best to the table.
So how have you combined that research with the coaching with your teams?
Yeah. So as I mentioned, I partner with an organization called Giant, and we have a platform that is a structure of how we develop people. So one of the systems we use is called 5 Voices. So it's really a personality identification tool that we use to help everybody understand their strengths, their tendencies, and potentially where they can have weak spots, but somebody else inevitably on the team has a strength that overcompensates or overcomes the weakness from someone else.
And so it's an analysis of those personalities to kind of optimize the team?
Yes, exactly.
And where do you take it from there? Just give me some examples of like some of the important things that you really have found in doing a lot of this to help teams grow their people.
Yeah. So one of the things I found kind of early on with the work that I've done with teams and organizations is that we focus pretty heavily on execution. So initially we're focusing on just getting the job done. And if you look at culture the way it is and look at the turnover rates, you really have to back up and focus on communication and relationships first in order for there to be team alignment and organizational alignment, and then execution comes next. So it really is this backup approach. If people want to work together, have high levels of connectivity, build strong relationships, and that sets the foundation of trust. So when you have that, execution happens naturally. People understand where they're headed as an organization and even their part in it a little deeper into that spectrum. But it really does start with the communication relationships.
Well, and I'm sure you observed this in the past, and when you're doing a lot of this consulting for healthcare organizations, I imagine you know that historically communication, while incredibly important, has not been a strength within healthcare. So is there anything unique about physicians, the healthcare team that helps sort of build on communication? Obviously, you probably see the full spectrum, already well communicating teams and teams that struggle. Mm-hmm. So where do you go? How do you start?
So I think the cool thing is like I have a medical background. So this is why my heart is like so much into medicine, because there's so many different dynamics at play. So in healthcare, there's leadership team, and then there's the physician groups, and then there's all those people around the physicians that just want to do good work together, right? They all have the same idea of what success looks like, and that is the patient outcome. And one of the recent clients that I started working with, I started coaching a physician, and we were talking about the dynamics in her office and how important it is for everybody to have a clear role and identity with what that looks like in the office. So even stepping back and helping her identify what role everybody played, it helped her have a different perspective on how she needed to communicate to be really effective in her role, and then help bring everybody else along with her to help them even build more towards the ultimate goal, which in her, practice is like, we want to take good care of our patients.
And so what are some of the action steps that people take?
Yeah. So when I start working with teams, I focus heavily on communication. So I will say more communication, not less. So you really have to double down on what you think effective communication is and go from there. So I'll give a basic meeting structure for people, say meet at least biweekly, if not weekly. And I'll say, I want you to do an icebreaker question. So get to know you question, project that's top of mind, and then clear action steps for everybody to grab onto.
So it's as simple as 3 basic things.
Yes. In areas where we're not heavy on communication, I just want to make it as simple as possible.
Well, that's great, because keeping it simple is where much of our audience likes to begin. And even when you're advanced, you can keep it simple.
Absolutely. And it's the foundation of the simple practices that create success.
Well, tell me a little bit more. Is there other key elements of this communication, or why you kind of have those 3 components?
I think what we miss often is the component of getting to know people outside of work. So the hobbies people have, their family life or structure, and that really creates the psychological safety. So the foundation of trust that's so important. If we're just focused on the project and the outcome or the action steps, that's just on execution. It's not on the communication or building a strong bond with the people that we're working with. And studies show that patient outcomes are so much better when we're focused on, we have deeper levels of trust with our team. So it is getting to know them. That's why I make sure I force that question in. I'm like, hey, get to know your team, get to know what they like, get to know something about them besides what they're doing at work.
Yeah, and that's probably a bit in the uncomfortable space, but you say it's critical to building the trust.
It can be uncomfortable, but what we know and what I recognize with doing the work is that people share what they're comfortable with, and it's not generally a lot of deep insights right away. As you get to know people, you might start to know some bigger things that are going on in their life, but that also creates the bond of trust and loyalty.
Well, this is fantastic stuff for team building and kind of helping develop people within your team. Do you mind summarizing your key points?
Yes, more communication, not less, and focus on the big 3. So get to know you question at those meetings, project that's top of mind, and action steps following.
Thank you so much, Becky.
Thank you so much. I appreciate the time.
There you have it in less than 10 minutes. This is Jeff Smith along with Becky Wolfe. Until the next episode of Life Improvement Strategies for the Surgeon Who Wants More. Ciao.
Now, take 10 minutes and put your plan into action to practice your best.